Hi, I am Sushant. India, once known as the Golden Bird, possessed immense wealth. The arrival of the British East India Company marked a turning point. The company, driven by profit, began exploiting India's resources. They took raw materials at low costs and flooded Indian markets with their manufactured goods. This systematic drain of wealth impoverished India. The once thriving textile industry was destroyed. Farmers were forced to grow cash crops like indigo, neglecting food crops. India's wealth was siphoned off to Britain, leaving behind a trail of poverty and despair. This economic exploitation formed a crucial basis for the resentment that would fuel India's struggle for independence. The British saw India as a source of revenue, not a nation deserving of respect. Before British rule, India was a mosaic of kingdoms and principalities. The British, through conquest and treaties, brought these diverse entities under a single administrative system. They established a centralized government, introduced a unified legal system, and developed infrastructure like railways and telegraphs. While driven by their own interests, the British inadvertently sowed the seeds of unity. Indians from different regions, speaking different languages, began to see themselves as a single entity under the yoke of foreign rule. This newfound unity, forged in the crucible of shared experience, became a potent force in the nationalist movement. The exploitation and humiliation inflicted by the British did not go unchallenged. Early forms of resistance emerged, often led by local chiefs and rulers who had lost their autonomy. The Sepoy Mutiny of 1857, sparked by the controversial greased cartridges, was a watershed moment. Though brutally suppressed, the mutiny shook the foundations of British rule. It demonstrated the simmering anger of the Indian populace and inspired future generations of nationalists. The events of 1857 served as a stark reminder that British rule was not invincible. The British introduced Western education in India, intending to create a class of Indians who could assist them in administration. Ironically, this very education proved to be a double-edged sword. Exposure to Western ideas of liberty, equality, and nationalism had a profound impact on the Indian psyche. Indians began to question the legitimacy of British rule. They read about the American and French revolutions and drew parallels with their own situation. A new generation, educated in the ideals of the West, rose to demand freedom and self-rule for their own nation. The burgeoning Indian press played a crucial role in shaping nationalist sentiments. Newspapers and journals, published in various regional languages, became platforms for criticizing British policies and expressing nationalist aspirations. Writers, poets, and journalists emerged as powerful voices of the movement. They wrote about the drain of wealth, the plight of the peasantry, and the indignities suffered by Indians under British rule. Their words resonated with the masses, fostering a sense of unity and awakening a desire for self-determination. The power of the pen, in the hands of these literary nationalists, proved to be a potent weapon against colonial rule. Section 6. From Classrooms to Congress. The birth of organized nationalism. The rise of nationalism led to the formation of organized political groups. The Indian National Congress, established in 1885, provided a platform for educated Indians to voice their demands for greater representation and autonomy within the British Empire. Early leaders like Dadabhai Naoroji and Gopal Krishna Gokhale advocated for reform and greater Indian participation in government. The INC, initially moderate in its approach, gradually became more assertive in its demands. The Partition of Bengal in 1905, a blatant attempt to divide and rule, further fueled nationalist sentiments and led to the rise of more radical leaders advocating for complete independence. Section 7. Divide and Rule, the British policy that backfired. The British, to maintain their control, often resorted to a policy of divide and rule. They exploited religious and caste divisions within Indian society, pitting Hindus against Muslims and upper castes against lower castes. This strategy, however, ultimately backfired. While it created temporary fissures, it also made Indians aware of the manipulative tactics of the British. Nationalist leaders recognized the importance of Hindu-Muslim unity and worked tirelessly to bridge the divide. The shared struggle for independence gradually overshadowed the differences that the British had sought to exploit. Section 8. The Price of Freedom, a Movement's Sacrifices. The Indian nationalist movement was not without its share of sacrifices. Countless Indians from all walks of life endured imprisonment, torture, and even death for the cause of freedom. Leaders like Bal Gangadhar Tilak and Lala Lajpat Rai spent years in jail for their beliefs. The Jallianwala Bagh massacre of 1919, where British troops opened fire on unarmed civilians, became a symbol of colonial brutality. These sacrifices, however, only strengthened the resolve of the Indian people. The blood of martyrs spilled on the altar of freedom nourished the roots of the nationalist movement. Gap 3S, Section 9, the formation of the Indian National Congress and the partition of Bengal. The formation of the Indian National Congress in 1885 marked a significant milestone in the Indian nationalist movement. Initially, the Congress started as a platform for educated Indians to voice their concerns and seek reforms from the British government. The early leaders of the Congress, often referred to as the moderates, believed in using constitutional methods and dialogue to achieve their goals. Figures like Dadabhai Naoroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, and Feroze Shah Mehta played pivotal roles in shaping the early years of the Congress. However, as the years passed, a new group of leaders emerged within the Congress, known as the Radicals. These leaders, including Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Lala Lajpat Rai, advocated for more direct action and were willing to adopt a more confrontational approach. The differences in strategies between the moderates and radicals often led to internal conflicts, but it also enriched the movement by bringing diverse perspectives and tactics to the forefront. The partition of Bengal in 1905 by the British Viceroy, Lord Curzon, was a turning point in the Indian independence movement. The division of Bengal, ostensibly for administrative reasons, was widely perceived as an attempt to divide and weaken the growing nationalist sentiment. The partition sparked widespread protests and led to the Swadeshi movement, where Indians boycotted British goods and promoted indigenous products. The impact of the partition of Bengal was profound. It galvanized the Indian population, cutting across regional and communal lines, and intensified the demand for self-governance. The resistance to the partition eventually forced the British to annul it in 1911. But the seeds of a more assertive and united nationalist movement had already been sown. The formation of the Indian National Congress and the partition of Bengal were pivotal events that shaped the trajectory of the Indian independence movement. They highlighted the evolving strategies and growing resolve among Indians to achieve freedom from colonial rule. Gap 3S, Section 10, the Swadeshi movement, boycott movement, and the Surat split. The Swadeshi movement, initiated in 1905, was a significant part of the Indian independence struggle. It aimed at promoting Indian goods and boycotting British products. The movement gained momentum in the wake of the partition of Bengal as Indians sought to assert their economic independence from British rule. The Swadeshi movement saw the rise of indigenous industries and the revival of traditional crafts, symbolizing a return to India's roots and self-reliance. The boycott movement complemented the Swadeshi movement by urging Indians to refuse British goods and services. This collective action extended beyond mere economic resistance. It became a form of passive protest against colonial exploitation. The boycott of British textiles in particular had a substantial impact as it disrupted the economic benefits the British derived from their Indian colony. The movement also fostered a sense of national pride and solidarity among Indians as they actively participated in the struggle for self-sufficiency. However, the growing intensity of the nationalist movement also brought to light the ideological differences within the Indian National Congress. In 1907, these differences culminated in the Surat split, which marked a division between the moderates and the extremists within the Congress. The moderates, led by figures like Gopal Krishna Gokhale, advocated for gradual reforms and constitutional methods. In contrast, the extremists, led by leaders such as Bal Gangadhar Tilak, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Lala Lajpat Rai, called for more direct and immediate action against British rule. The Surat split underscored the diverse strategies and approaches within the nationalist movement, reflecting the multifaceted nature of India's struggle for independence. While the split temporarily weakened the Congress, it also highlighted the dynamic and evolving nature of Indian nationalism. The differing strategies of the moderates and extremists, though conflicting, ultimately contributed to the rich tapestry of the independence movement, paving the way for future leaders to draw upon a range of tactics in the fight for freedom. The Swadeshi and boycott movements, along with the Surat split, were pivotal moments in the Indian nationalist movement. They showcase the resilience, creativity, and determination of the Indian people, setting the stage for the intensified struggle that would eventually lead to India's independence. Section 9. A legacy forged in unity and courage. The Indian nationalist movement, spanning decades, was a testament to the indomitable spirit of the Indian people. It was a movement that transcended religious, linguistic, and regional differences, uniting Indians from all walks of life under the banner of freedom. From the early stirrings of discontent to the mass mobilization of the Gandhian era, the struggle for independence showcased the power of unity, perseverance, and unwavering belief in the right to self-determination. The legacy of the nationalist movement continues to inspire generations of Indians. It serves as a reminder that freedom is not free, that it must be fought for and cherished, and that a nation united can overcome even the most formidable of challenges. In summary, this video has explored the key moments of the Indian nationalist movement, highlighting the unity and courage that defined it. This is part 1 of our series on the rise of Indian nationalism. Stay tuned for more.